All right. All right, good morning. Welcome back to our virtual career cafe. I'm Amy Good from the Community Education Center, and I will be your moderator for today. We are recording the session, making it available to other students to view later on. Today we have with us Trooper Attinger, Troop F Forensic Service Unit out of Emporium, and Matthew Perry, a forensic scientist from the New York State Police Crime Laboratory. So I want to thank you both for joining us today. Why don't we just start out with an introduction and, what inspired you to pursue a career in law enforcement? So Trooper Attinger, if you want to go first.
Good morning. Thank you for having me also. I'm Trooper Carly Attinger. Like you said, I'm with Troop F Emporium. I'm a member of the patrol unit, but I also am part of the forensic unit alternate position. I've been in law enforcement for about 3.5 years now. What inspired me kind of going to law enforcement was just to be able to give back to the community and help others. And I look forward to hearing from you all today.
All right. Matthew, how about you?
Hi, my name is Matthew Perry. I'm a forensic scientist in the seized drug section. I'm located at the Western Satellite Crime Lab in Olean, New York. I went into this line of field because I was interested in law enforcement and being able to help out, but I also have a strong love of science, and this just kind of meshed the two together. So I can help people, but I'm also just an area that I love to work in.
So Matthew, did you have to go to schooling?
Yes, for the New York State Police Crime Lab to become any of our forensic science positions, no matter which section, whether it's seized drugs, DNA, toxicology, you need a bachelor's in a natural science, which means a science in chemistry, biology, physics.
Okay. And Officer Attinger, how did you get into, did you have to go to police academy or did you have to get a degree? Like, what are the requirements?
Yeah, so we have to all attend the State Police Academy, which is in Hershey, PA. They actually just lowered the educational background, so you don't have to have college credits anymore. You just need a high school degree or a GED. To apply, you have to apply and then you have to take a written test. There's a polygraph, a background check, and then a physical fitness test at the end before you actually get to go to the academy. Our academy is like a 26-week-long program that you're actually down in Hershey being trained. It's a quite intense process, actually.
Sounds like it would take a while to go through the application process.
It's roughly about a year is what it's taking, I believe, give or take. So.
All right. Are there any specific areas to specialize in?
Within the state police, there is a ton of different programs or areas to specialize in. Some consist of like the criminal investigation unit, narcotics, aviation, canine. The opportunities are basically endless with the state police.
Okay. Matthew, how about, what does a day in the life look like for you?
A lot of my day varies day to day. Normally, if everything is going on a regular basis, I'll be doing casework submitted to us by police agencies in the western half of New York. Then, depending on where the evidence comes from, decides which laboratory it'll go to. We cover just the western half. I will test the evidence, write reports on what I'm doing. Currently, we have new equipment in, so we're going through verification processes, making sure that equipment's working how it should. Part of my duties is I also have to make sure we have all the supplies we need. So I actually take care of the purchasing end to get everything from office supplies to every chemical or standard we need to have into our lab.
So do you have to go and do a lot of additional training or get certifications to continue the job?
For the section I'm in, There is a training program that's put on by the New York State Police. I can only speak to the seized drug section because that's a training I've gone through. But we went through everything from the definition, how drugs are scheduled, what that scheduling means, and whether the classification then a drug will fall into, to how all of our instruments work, and then using those instruments to be able to go through and identify any controlled substances, how we need to write up our reports so they're clear and concise, but also make sense, to also being sent and going and testifying in court when needed.
Okay. So are you primarily working in a lab, or is there any field work involved in your job?
For my job, I'm 100% in the lab the whole time. The only time I will leave the lab is if I'm going up to the main headquarters lab for some training they're putting on there, or if I need to go out and testify in court. Otherwise, everything else is controlled in this setting. All evidence collection is actually performed by the submitting agency. The New York State Police has its own dedicated unit that can go through 2 crime scenes and perform that are all actual troopers. We're just here and on the receiving end to go through it.
So, Trooper Attinger, I think maybe you might be able to talk more about the field work piece of this, I'm guessing.
Yes. So our typical day, we come in and we get into our cars here. We load all of our equipment for the day. Most of us have patrol bags with all different types of tools and stuff in them, and then our rifles and our heavy vests. And then we will go in for a roll call. It usually lasts anywhere around a half an hour, and then we're gone for the day. So usually we'll be in the car, whether we're doing traffic, security checks, whether we have court or we're running calls. A lot of our day consists of us being in the vehicle and on the move. Our forensic side of things, we get to go to the scene, so we're the first ones on hand, and then we'll collect the evidence. And like Matthew said, then we'll submit it to the lab for them to do their part.
So what kind of shift typically do you work? Is it regular or irregular?
So our shifts are considered swing shift. We up here in Emporium, we work either 7 to 3s, 3 to 11s, or 11 to 7s. It just changes depending on the week and your stretch that you're working.
Okay. So I assume there's collaboration and teamwork involved in both of your careers. Matthew, do you want to talk about like who you're collaborating with when it comes to your job?
With us, a lot of what we see are in trends, different drugs that come through. You'll actually see it push across the state in different ways. So we're seeing something we haven't seen before. We're actually talking to our coworkers in other areas of the state that's like, oh, have you seen this before? This is new. We can't trying to prepare it so we can run it on the instrumentation, as well as some of the evidence we get in also has to then go to other sections such as DNA in our laboratory. So knowing, oh, we have to go through and remove what we want and then send what needs to be sent to the right areas. And a lot of that is coordinated through our supervisors. So we will go through and know it's like, okay, this is going to have to go here. What do we need to do on our end before we can go through? And then also based on what different things we're seeing, we provide that information also to law enforcement to know, hey, this is starting to show up, or this is something brand new we've never seen before. Keep an eye out. So it's not just internally with the lab, we also share it with the agencies around the state so that they know, oh, this to be on the lookout.
Oh, that makes sense. How about you, Trooper Attinger?
In the patrol aspect, we work a lot with local law enforcement agencies, the judges, defense attorneys, even like the Attorney General's office, they'll come in for some cases and we'll have to assist with them. EMS and the hospital staff, we work pretty close with them on a day-to-day basis also. So
Great. How about technology and innovation, Trooper Attinger? You know, I'm sure that you have to stay up to date, but you know, how does that work with your vehicles and things?
yeah, so it's always changing. Currently we have like cameras in our cars that are always recording whether we're on traffic stops or stuff like that. Most local agencies have body cameras, which we're currently trying to evolve into. So we're trying to stay up with the times. All of our reports are done in the computer. Just with everything changing, there's a lot of different systems to use. You just have to figure out which one you use for what and which one works the best, honestly.
And Matthew, I think you touched on it a couple of times about the different changes and like trying to keep up with all the testing and stuff that you have going on.
Yes, like they're constantly looking what new advancements have occurred in science. Is there a new piece of equipment out there or a new way we can perform this testing that would allow us to get the results quicker, easier, or more accurate? So we're just watching. We're not sitting on the very cusp evolving new things, but we're always keeping an eye on what new equipment's out there. Could it be useful in our lab to do what we need to do? So as the science is always evolving, we're always keeping an eye on what's going on with that. How can it help us?
All right, students, I know that sometimes you have to come and go because of your schedules. Does anybody have a question at this time that they want to ask? You can either put it in the chat or you can unmute. I just want to give you an opportunity in case you have to jump off. Anybody? All right, if not, I'll just keep going. All right, so let's move on to like challenges. What are some of the challenges that you commonly face in your jobs? Trooper Attinger?
I'd say the biggest challenge we face in the law enforcement end is the unknown. Each day you start your day and you don't know what you're getting into, whether it's just a regular welfare check call that you're helping an elderly lady or man off the ground, or if you're getting into a serious police incident for the day. It's a big challenge. You don't know you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it's different every day. So that's the biggest problem that we have, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely say it change your day. You never know what's going to happen. So it's not like you're doing something the same every day. Matthew, how about you? Common challenges.
Our largest challenges we see is just the different substances that come into the laboratory. As we get more experience, I can hit a point now where I have a general idea of, oh, I think certain things might fall along this line based on just visual appearance to begin with. So I have an idea of where to start, but different extractions we have to do to separate out different components so we can get our final result, as well as the safety aspect in the lab of we're dealing with controlled substances. I've personally gone through and gotten in something that I thought was cocaine and turned out to be an extremely large amount of pure fentanyl. So just knowing through and making sure we are constantly in our correct personal protective equipment, and when we're handling all evidence and just never knowing what's truly in the substance that we end up handling.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be very difficult. So how do you handle being in the public eye? I guess Trooper Attinger, you know, are you finding that people view your position negatively? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, the saying is you're constantly living in a fishbowl. Everyone's watching you no matter what you do. So even when I'm not at work, I'm cautious of what I'm doing and making sure that I'm doing the best that I can. With people that see us negatively, we don't really have that in this area. We're fortunate to live in a wonderful area and work in this area that most people still view the law enforcement positively. However, when you do deal with the negative people, you just treat them as how you wanted to be treated in that position. We're dealing with people at their worst, so you just treat them with kindness is all.
And what do you find most rewarding?
I find most rewarding is knowing that someone at the end is satisfied or happy with what we come, like the outcome of the case, or whether I helped them, or just knowing that they're satisfied makes me satisfied. So.
And how about you, Matthew? What do you find most rewarding about your job?
A lot of it being able to go through and just constantly doing the casework, seeing different items, different types of things, and being able to go through and say, oh, this is in here. Or I also have no issue of saying, I didn't find any controlled substance. I truly enjoy showing this is what the science says is there. I will never go through and try and force anything. It's no, I'm just interpreting this is what my data tells me. So this is my result.
So can you tell me a little bit about like a career advancement in your field? Like what is an intro, like a starting position, and like what do you work up to, or what can you work to?
A lot of it depends on what different discipline you'd like to get into. If I one day I wanted to go through and say, hey, I want to work in firearms, I'd actually have to wait for a position to be open up and go through the application process like anyone else would. Where the section I'm already in, when I first came in, I actually started off as a senior laboratory technician. And then an opportunity to become a forensic scientist opened up. And I was able to apply and achieve the position. And from there, we have technical scientists that will spend more time on training newer scientists, looking at new equipment, validating or creating new methods to improve what we're already working on. And then we hit into our supervisor roles where every lab has at least one supervisor covering our section. And then from there, you get higher up just in the laboratory chain that we have an associate director that covers all 4 labs for drug chemistry, and then there's a director above them. So there is if you'd like to advance, as long as the position's open, there's opportunity to advance through.
And Matthew, I think we didn't really touch base that you work for the New York State Police, but you are not a police officer. You didn't go through that whole kind of training.
Correct. We did not have to go to the state police academy that the normal troopers would go through. We did have to go through the same extensive background check, drug testing, polygraph to go through and enter into our position where we are. But they found that someone that'd like to be a trooper on the road, they could have the same degree as me, but then they need this additional training that they'd receive at the police academy, where I went through and then I'm in the seized drugs. I had specific training I needed just for this section that took about a year to go through and just be approved to do all different types of testing. So as it goes, we all have the same idea, but the type of training that's required will vary.
And Trooper Attinger, did you want to talk at all about like career advancement? I know you mentioned there were different like areas, different fields, but as far as like advancement goes?
Yes, there is advancement opportunities. You start out in the academy as a cadet. When you graduate, you become a trooper, and then from there on out, you can promote to be a corporal, a sergeant, lieutenant, and then it keeps going. There's even more opportunities to go from there. If you want to promote. However, like I said, there are a bunch of different specialized roles that you have the chance to get into if you want to go in that direction also.
Okay. So are there specific skills or qualities that are highly valued that, students should know about that they might want to hone in on? Trooper Attinger?
The biggest skill that I would recommend or think is the most valuable in law enforcement is communication. You can't get that through college or anything like that, but being able to communicate with people, like I said, we're dealing with them at their lowest. So being able to talk to them and figure out what's going on is the most important thing that I could recommend.
Okay. And Matthew, how about you?
For us, communication is important on our end because how I'll explain things or talking to one of my coworkers when we have to go through and then talk with the defense attorneys, the district attorneys, anyone else, and trying to explain so they'd understand what we're talking about, as well as also just being inquisitive and wondering, what is this? How can I make this better? Oh, I tried something this way. What would happen if I went through and took the sample and prepared it this separate way? How would it affect what's going to happen? And just always be curious on what can change or how to make things better.
So Trooper Attinger, can you talk anything like you're kind of a non-traditional, in a non-traditional career, like as a female, have you experienced any struggles being a female in that kind of position?
I don't think so. Actually, I think it's becoming more and more common. And I think, like I said, being in a wonderful community that I work in, most are grateful to see a woman trooper or excited to talk to a woman trooper here, especially in the Emporium area. I think a lot of times you'll just have, sometimes they'll try to overlook you, but you just work past it.
Good. Do you have any advice for high school students that, want to pursue going into law enforcement?
I think if you want to pursue law enforcement, just look a lot into it. Continue to help your community. If you want to know more, you can get on patrooper.com. They have a lot about recruitment and stuff for the state police. But I'd say just learn how to communicate and stay to the path.
All right, thanks. Matthew, how about you?
For us, since a college degree is required, I'd recommend it when you're looking at the programs that they offer, make sure it actually has lab intensive. There are forensic science programs out there if you're looking exactly for that program that follow more along criminalistic settings and you don't put you in the lab enough where in my job here for the state police, you need that heavy lab experience and is a requirement. So it's just looking at the different options, or like I said, any natural science field would suffice. And also watch what you do now because you think, oh, this is no big deal. When I went through the background check, by the time I was done, the investigator knew more about me than I knew about myself, and everything will come up. And you just have to be careful because a couple poor choices now could affect you later on in your life. So when you're trying to go through, they could say, you and another person, they're both really great. While this person has these couple bad qualities or things that popped up in the past, this other person doesn't. Let's go with the less risk.
Yeah, that's very good advice. I hadn't thought about that. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you would like to mention at this time, Matthew?
At this point, it's different. It's when I was in high school, I didn't even think about this line of work. It didn't happen until later on for me in college. Because when I was in high school, I did not know 100% what I wanted to do. In college, I changed my mind a couple different times. I knew I wanted to be with science. So that's why my degree is just a bachelor's in general science because I didn't have one set path. And even if you don't get into the field right away, just keep applying. One of my coworkers in this lab is from Georgia. Another one is from Pennsylvania. So you don't have to look in your set area. You might have to be willing to move across the country to get into this line of work if it's what you'd like. But once you're in, I do find it highly rewarding.
Great. That's great. Great advice. Trooper Attinger?
I would have to agree. If you don't get in right away, don't give up. Just keep trying. The field is very rewarding. And just because you don't succeed the first time doesn't mean that you shouldn't stop trying. You'll get there eventually.
Great. All right, students, any questions at this time that you want to ask? Anything that they haven't covered that you were wondering about? Don't be shy. Just drop it in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself if you'd like. I think I see someone.
Hold on. Okay, go ahead and ask.
I have a question.
Okay.
My
Let's hear
question for both of them was, what was like the hardest challenge you guys have had to face in your job?
For myself, the hardest challenge I ever had to do was actually during training. We go through and to get ready and teach us how to testify in court, we had to go through a moot court. For us, I just found it hard because the judge, the prosecution, and the defense were all supervisors of my section. So when they asked the question, they already knew the exact answer that they needed to get. But I won't lie, when I have to go to court, it's still a little nerve-wracking, just making sure, going over notes. I just had to go to trial for evidence I tested 2 years ago. So I had to go back through my notes and just review and know, okay, this is straightforward on this is what it is. And never be afraid, no matter what, to know. I don't know this off the top of my head. There's certain things I do know, the rest, that is why we have resources to go through and look up and figure out what we need to know. It's not all everything straight out of memory. There's a lot of, I'm going to go back and review documents to say, okay, this is what this is.
Trooper Attinger?
I think the hardest part of my job so far is trying to keep up with the changing case law. We go to a call with what you know and how you react to it. You got to keep up with the case law because you can get yourself in some pretty good situations if you don't know what the updated case law is. And this time form in the world, it's changing a lot. So you just got to research and keep up to date with it. It's all.
Okay, good advice. Anybody else have any questions? Bob, do you have a question?
Matthew, could you talk about some of the other what you call it, departments or whatever that work with you there?
Are you talking about the different sections of the library?
Yeah, the different sections. What are some of them?
We have DNA, firearms, trace evidence, toxicology, and then there are some specialized things that computer crimes where the sworn members of the troopers are in charge of that are within the laboratory. But as going into depth on each section, I only know what they are, how they fully function. I can't speak to just because that's not my area of expertise that I do know with them, but they are there. The New York State Police does have a lot of videos actually that they did in the past couple of years explaining the different sections and what they do, that's available online on their website, or I'm sure you can find them on YouTube if you looked for them.
And Trooper Attinger, you said you sometimes work in the forensic part. Is that just at the site, or do you actually get called into like lab type work?
Correct. So it's kind of like a part-time basis. It's usually on site. However, Troop F does have a headquarters. They have a small laboratory that they can do like fingerprints and that type of stuff before they send it to the lab. So we do a little bit of that stuff also, but nothing big. All the big stuff goes to the lab.
So if you're involved with a more complicated accident or whatever, do you have troopers that you call in that do that kind of investigation or?
Yes, so we have what we call the CARS unit. It's a crash reconstruction unit, and they come in and do all the measurements, pictures. They do some mathematic equations, and usually they recreate the scene for you. So.
Okay. I had a young person yesterday by chance that I was talking to that wanted to go into law enforcement and was planning on going to college. That was sort of the direction I was already aimed. Uh, and surprised me a little bit with what you're saying, the de-emphasis maybe for the trooper part. When they're trying to make that kind of decision, our mentors work with students across the region. What advice should we be giving them as to a process maybe before they make a decision which way they're going?
I would say that a college degree never hurts. We do a lot of communication. We do a lot of report writing. We do a whole bunch of other stuff that the degree never hurts. I have a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice myself. However, like I said, they just dropped the requirements for it. So it's no longer needed. You used to need 60 credits. However, they just got rid of it. But if they're still leaning towards college, they can go and still apply to the academy when they're done with their college degree.
Bob, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, the phone was ringing here and I was trying to do two things at once. I feel like the officer there sort of waiting to hear what's coming next to her. Um, the we also obviously in law enforcement you have all different levels. You're dealing with the state police part. There's also all the opportunities with local police, and then I guess all the federal agencies too. It really applies to both of you. Do you have many exchanges with the other levels of law enforcement?
We deal a lot with our local department here in this area. They're very nice. We always are assisting each other with anything that we need. Besides our local law enforcement, other than different troops, we're pretty close to Troop C here. So we deal a lot with them, but that's state trooper to state trooper. But other than local, there's not too many other parts that we deal with here.
Students may not be familiar in Pennsylvania, besides the local police and the state police. We also have people that go into law enforcement through, was it the state parks and the various wardens that work in environmental?
Correct.
And some of those uh, have similarities, I guess, to what you do.
Yes. So the DCNR, the Rangers, they also go through a similar academy like we do. The Fish and Boat Commission, they go through a similar academy. And I think even the Sheriff's Department goes through a similar academy to which we do.
Okay. And Matthew, do you work across state lines at all? Do you cooperate back and forth at more regional basis and just New York State?
No, for our lab, we handle just cases from New York State. So anything outside of New York State, we would not handle that. All that would be sent to a different laboratory, but we'll handle from any local agency all the way up to federal agencies. We've had submit evidence to us as long as it's occurred within New York State.
Do you have certain sectional work that certain labs specialize in, I guess, across New York?
Yes, my lab that I'm currently in Olean, we only test for the presence of controlled substances here, as well as the lab near Binghamton and the lab out near Newburgh, New York. All three are just seized drugs. All other evidence sections is up in Albany. So we understand some local agencies getting evidence all the way out to Albany can be an issue, especially having an officer drive that far. So we'll accept evidence for any section to our laboratory and then relay it to the correct lab needed to perform the testing. So even if it's evidence that they need DNA done on or trace evidence testing performed, they can bring it to us and we will get it up to the headquarters lab or FIC where they can perform that testing for them and give them the results.
Okay, now to sort of change subjects a little bit or go back, both of you have stressed communications in terms of with the trooper, more with the personal one-to-one that you deal with constantly. Matthew, you sort of pinpointed, I think, the benefit of good written communications and taking notes. And are there other skill sets like that that are students that are working in high school should be sharpening their skills on, I guess?
For here, I found good organization skills are also extremely important. Even though all of my notes are taken electronically and separated that way, I'm still generating a lot of data and having that paper. And I'm not just working on one case at a time. I might work on 5 or 6 different pieces of evidence in a day, depending on how heavy my workflow for that day is, and knowing keeping everything segregated and clean so I know what's going on, because while I'm waiting for the instruments to give me results, we don't want dead time there. So I'll start working on more evidence for a different case while I'm waiting for those results. So knowing what goes with what and making sure everything's marked and kept where it needs to be kept.
I'm assuming, Trooper, you have the same thing with time management, that you don't get to work on just one case at a time.
Yeah, time management is a big thing here. You get a bunch of cases all at once and all the reports needed also. So I would say time management is huge, but also writing your English. Pay attention to English class. We write a lot of reports and it's super important. I never thought as a trooper that I would use grammar and English as much as I do, but I just got a report kicked back the other day because I didn't put a comma in the right spot. So it's just it's super important, and you wouldn't think it's a big deal, but it is. I mean, your grammar and the reports are they're what you testify to in court, so it's a big deal.
And I'm assuming when you're testifying, it's not necessarily very quick afterwards. There could be real time lapses between when you investigate and when you testify.
Correct. And usually the bigger the incident, the longer you wait for your court hearing. So it just depends.
Anything else, Bob? Are you?
Oh, go ahead, Amy.
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Do each of them want to give maybe a sales pitch for their programs and that? I are there plenty of openings in both of your situations?
For the crime lab, and especially if you're looking for a set section, it really depends what openings appear when. It's really hard to tell, but now I don't pay attention since I have this job what openings are across the rest of the country. Well, like I said, a lot of the times it might take you a while. If you really want to work for your home state in their lab, you could wait. And also at the same time, when you apply, it's not an extremely quick process. It will take some time to go through everything with sending in your application. If you get an interview, then the backgrounds. It was about 10 or 11 months from when I saw the initial opening to be a senior lab tech for this lab to when I actually started at the laboratory, where a lot of private sector jobs you could interview and be going within a month. This just a little bit more time, so you need to have some more patience and understand that it's not going to be a drop of the hat going, oh, I applied, I should have an interview next week.
Well, I think both of you said it took upwards of a year maybe to go through the process of getting where you are. So were you doing something else during that time?
Yes, for me, I was actually working in a quality control lab for actually a copper manufacturer before I worked here. And even before that job, I was working in an environmental lab testing soil and water samples. So I've worked several jobs in different labs until I eventually ended up here.
And that's important to know. Our students sometimes think as soon as you study something, you're going to go right to where that you study for. It doesn't always happen. The same way, Trooper Attinger?
Yes, I was working at a juvenile facility. I was doing case management work there before I got on the job. So I was finishing my degree and working there. So yeah, it doesn't just happen right away. So just keep working. And like I said, it's a very rewarding job once you get on. Um, it it's just rewarding, honestly.
So I do have a question from a student wondering how often you guys have to go to trial, go to court.
So on the law enforcement end, we go to court a lot of times. Usually for anytime anyone's cited, we usually go to court. However, it's usually a quick court. Things usually get settled before they go to trial. If it's a bigger case, we go to trial, but we usually don't have a lot of those here in this area. And a lot of times our criminal investigative unit will take over the bigger cases for us, so we don't have to go.
And on the laboratory side, in 6 years, I've gone 9 times. Some years I've gone a bunch. Other years I can go months before I even see a subpoena. The trial could be set up and know, oh, I might have to go. But then something happens on the court side, whether a deal is reached or they plead out or it's going to be adjourned and then it gets pushed off. So we don't go a crazy amount in the lab, but we do see subpoenas a good number of times, knowing we might need to go.
Matthew, in your situation, can your reports take the place of you going?
They can, as long as the defense and the prosecutor have agreed to that. They can stipulate to the report. Now, the defendants do have the right to face their accusers. I am the writer of that report, so if they want me to show up, I can show up. So it all depends on how it plays out. I've had coworkers where that's happened before, or other times they want to come in, us to come in and just talk about what we're doing and how we got to the result we got.
I have another question on the chat too. Do you have to do an internship? They'd like to know.
For the state police, we do provide opportunities for internships because some college programs require it in order to get your degree in that. But in order to get a job here, before I started at the state police, I had done nothing with the state police lab. I had just applied, luckily enough, got an interview and was able to continue on. So I did not have to have an internship with the lab before I could start. But that is an option that the lab does provide internships at times for different sections for people to be able to come in.
Do they allow, Matthew, for job shadowing for high school students?
That I can't speak to. It's above my position to know. On my experience, I have not seen job shadowing. We have had tour groups come in, but at the same time, with what we're working with evidence associated to people that are accused of crimes. Everyone's innocent until proven guilty. I don't know how that would play out. That would have to be something that would have to go up through my administration for them to decide on what would occur, or if they'd allow it or not.
Do they allow people like you to go out to the schools to talk to the kids?
I know that they've done it for college programs before, but again, if that's something someone would like to request and try and have done, that would be something, again, say if I was contacted, I'd forward it to my supervisor and he'd forward it up the chain to see what the final result was. Such as me speaking here today, I was asked if I'd like to do this. I'm more than happy to talk about my job. I just had to go through and get approval through the chain of command. So any requests, I'd either put someone in contact with my supervisor directly, or I'd make sure my supervisor would get it, and then he'd go through and make sure everything went through the channels it needed to and be able to give the affirmative result. I just can't say, oh, I'm going to this school today to go give a talk. I need permission.
Okay. And Trooper, I assume they can't job shadow a Trooper very easily.
No, unfortunately, we don't do internships or job shadowing, to my knowledge. Like I said, I've never seen it. However, you can reach out to a recruiter, and they'll be more than willing to talk to an individual individually, or a school as a group. And like I said earlier, if they get on a patrooper.com. It has a lot of recruitment information, and I encourage anyone that's even interested in law enforcement or the state police to get on it and just take a look at all the opportunities that it provides.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. All right. I think that finishes up our session today. I want to thank you both for joining us, and the schools. Thank you for joining us today. And we will, I will put some contact information out with the recording if the students have any further questions. All right.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. You too.